Hey, Celina, thank you for coming in. You have such a remarkable background of accomplishment, and you're going to share some of those insights with our audience. So it's very much appreciated.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Stephen, for having me.
So, Selena, if you can give our audience kind of the maybe two or three inflection points in your life, and it could have been when you're 2 or 5 years old or 10, inside, outside the family, um, could have been something that happened when you
Mm.
visited you're part of another country. Sometimes people just jump into their first job. No, there's usually things before that that shaped your life. So, what are those pivotal moments that shaped who you are today and your view of everything today?
Wow, that's a good question. I think, well, the first thing that came to my mind actually, well, was during my first job, but it was actually, when I first graduated from university, I went to Columbia University in New York, and I'd gone to the engineering school, and I was starting my first job at Deloitte, in downtown Manhattan. And so the pivotal moment actually was 9/11. I was 1 year out of university and working downtown, across the street from the World Trade Center. And, this is a moment that obviously it has left an indelible mark on so many people's lives. But I suppose like how it affected me personally is that, that day when we were essentially blocked from our office and told to, I had taken the subway down to the World Trade Center, and I had come out right after the second plane had hit the World Trade Center. And you know, the police and everyone was there telling everyone to walk home. And it literally took me the entire day from, 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. to get home, where I was living at the very northern tip of Manhattan. So just walking through Manhattan, I mean, everything was surreal, obviously. But one of the things that I told myself while I was walking home was that I was like, I have to do something. Like this can't be it. And I kind of made a commitment to myself that, the world is much larger than my little bubble in New York and my little job in corporate America. And I had already been thinking about it, like I had already been kind of thinking about like, what I would like to do with my life. But that day, like walking home for so many hours, like it gave me enough time to actually make a promise to myself, to do more, and to do better. And kind of this idea that it's like if at any point like I was able to stop my life and cut my life right here, I could say like I was very proud of what I spent my life and my time doing. So that was kind of, yeah, at a moment that was a really true turning point. And I ended up leaving New York. It was maybe 9 months later. I mean, it took me a little while, but I actually joined the Peace Corps from there, which was a complete
Wow.
jump. Yeah.
So that's really fascinating. I mean, 9/11 was really shocking for you, and it was quite pivotal. You, it made you reflect on your purpose in your life, and then
Yeah.
you shift to Peace Corps, which is a big shift. I I want to go back into your background though, because you've got a bachelor's degree in applied mathematics and computing science and a master's degree in international affairs. I can see that tie-in of international affairs with the Peace
Hmm.
Corps. And this is from Columbia, which is a really good school, right? And but so what got you into applied mathematics and computer science? Like, was that your family pushing you to get into that area, or you just had a
Oh,
natural tendency? You liked math and things like that?
yeah, yeah. No, I liked math a lot from the very beginning. From the yeah, since I was a kid. I mean, it's funny you say like, did my family push me into it? It's kind of interesting. I mean, because I am Asian American, I'm half Chinese and I'm half Japanese. And so people a lot of times assume that my parents had some role in pressuring me. But interestingly, actually, my family's from Hawaii. I'm from California, like, after my parents got married, they moved to California. So I was born and raised in California. But it's also interesting because I have a kind of I don't know, like a blended cultural background. And I wouldn't say that my family, like, was very traditional in the sense of pressuring me. I mean, my brother, he studied art. So, and we came from the same family. And then meanwhile, I'm going to like engineering school and studying math. So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed math from a very early age. I remember like one of the presents from Santa Claus when I was like 9 years old. That was like my favorite that I saved forever, was like this little Mr. Professor calculator. That, it was like, yeah, yeah. So when I went to Columbia, yeah, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to study, but the applied math program was really compelling to me because it was it was a mix of some pure math classes, but then actually like applying it in the applied side was then like a lot of engineering classes, statistics, probability, which was actually more interesting for me. So yeah, so that's how I ended up studying that.
So that's really fascinating. I mean, Hawaii is known to be quite a diverse, sort of very accepting. Um, um, there's this kind of melting pot there, and sort of and bias and prejudice and things like that are really subdued there, like compared to many other parts of the world. So, and then it has a large Japanese population as well, right?
Yeah.
So but you're part Japanese and part Chinese. So that's really interesting. I mean, I come from a Japanese heritage, but my family came over into North America like a long, long, long time ago.
Okay, yes. I mean, that would be the same as me. I mean, my family came, I guess, in the mid 1800s to Hawaii. Yeah, so probably the same. Where did your family land?
Well, but getting back to you though, I mean, normally Japanese, or at least in Canada, Japanese and Chinese are like in their separate communities. But in Hawaii, is it different than Japanese and Chinese?
Oh, it's very mixed. I have
I see.
cousins that are all types of mixes.
Right.
Yeah, I know people in California were always shocked that I was half Chinese and half Japanese, but in Hawaii, no one even blinks an eye at you.
Right. But you do kind of live that stereotype of an Asian, though, right? Mathematics, pure science. Well, sometimes there's this kind of stereotype of medicine or law or something like that. Right?
Yeah, so, engineering.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that I did this a very hard pivot. Going into the Peace Corps and then working nonprofits from there. I'm very grateful to my parents that they accepted it. I mean, they were supportive the whole time.
But what made you decide? I mean, you got this really strong basis of mathematics, applied mathematics, because you like the practical application of it, and computing science, so you know how to program and things like that, right? And you would understand programming logic and all of the kind of the theory behind computing science. And computing science is really heavily math, so the two kind of work well hand in hand. And because you got a combined mathematics and computing science background, then that means that would set you up well for AI, because AI has applied mathematics anyways in it, right? So, and then you get a master's degree in international affairs. Why the pivot there in your education?
Yeah, so after I did the Peace Corps, and that was in Panama.
I see. Okay, you did the Peace Corps first, and then, okay, that now it makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't go back to graduate school. I didn't think I would go back to graduate school. I didn't think it was for me. But I went many, many years later. But I had, after the Peace Corps, I was working in different international development types of programs, and then I felt like going back to grad school made sense. Like I really wanted to get the rigor back into the work that I was doing. Like I was doing a lot of just kind of like hands-on actual work, but I wanted to get kind of the academic underpinning of the stuff that we were doing. But what was exciting to me about graduate school, the program that I went to at Columbia, is actually very flexible. And that was where I got reacquainted again with my math background, actually, ironically. Yeah, because I ended up taking a lot of like econometrics classes, economics and statistics and data modeling. And that's actually where, I think the timing was right, where data modeling and the tools that were available were much more, powerful than when I was in undergrad. And yeah, so that's actually how I got really into the data modeling side. And
wow, okay. So that fits. So you do the stint in the Peace Corps. You worked and lived across Latin America, Asia, and Africa, and that changed your mindset into the international affairs part. But you do the international affairs and economics and modeling and data modeling, things like that, all makes. In fact, math is helpful in that area. So it's a great combination. It's like a professor I know from Waseda. Her name is Toshi Takahashi, but she has a math background. I would say she's a prodigy in math, or not say she is a prodigy in math, but she ends up getting her master's and PhD in other areas. But it's helpful. The math is actually helpful.
Yes.
And she's ending up as an AI expert, but more on the behavioral social aspects because her advanced degrees are in that area. But it gives her an advantage over others. And that's because she has the math background. So I could see this giving you an advantage, right? Because you understand kind of the fundamentals. I mean, math, if you're good at math, you can do almost anything that's science related, right? So
yeah, someone once said to me, like, what's fun about data science is you get to play in everyone's backyard.
yeah, for sure.
That's how I feel.
Okay, so I could see how all of these kind of set up then, like mathematics, computer science, Peace Corps, and then your master's degree in international affairs, but then you're doing a lot of economic modeling and stuff, which has math in there and data modeling, and then
well, and what was exciting, it was that connection between like international development topics, kind of like realities on the ground, and I guess in a way the solutions that people actually need or that are needed on the ground, and how more advanced approaches in mathematics, statistics could actually play a role. At that time it wasn't even, even then I graduated from graduate school in 2009. So it's still the early days of like so-called big data. It was, there was starting to be excitement around big data, but, so I think at that time, there was just a lot of interest in like, for example, Esther Duflo had won the Nobel Peace Prize that year or around that time for the work that she was doing at MIT to apply randomized controlled trials, which is traditionally in the medical field, to international development topics. And that was her research. So that for me, that sparked so many ideas of saying, okay, how can you take, things that are developed in one sector, and how does that translate into like real world problems that, that I was familiar with because I'd been living in Latin America and doing the Peace Corps. It's kind of like, okay, there's huge opportunities there. And also because the people, I mean, just like you were saying, it's like the people who typically work in international development and the, in the NGO space, like they don't necessarily have this technical mind either. So to be able to connect those dots, is super valuable and something that I was really interested in.
Okay, so you get this master's degree in international affairs, which has this fundamental foundation in mathematics as well. And then, and it's got data analytics and data modeling in there, which really sets you up well for AI. And then where did you go from there?
From there, I was working in, different NGOs, but particularly then I was in a specific niche of data, the role of data in whatever work we were doing. So I was working with a program that was funded by Gates Foundation and the German government, the GIZ, which is part of the German government. I went to Thailand, but and I've done a couple of projects, but the idea was always kind of this space of getting more value and more impact out of the data, in the work that we were doing. So So it was a mix of being after graduate school, I was in Thailand, and then I went back to California and did a whole bunch of different projects like with the UN, with the World Bank, but with a real specific focus on data, and which was everything. Like actually for me, it was like the whole data value chain. Like it's where does the data come from? How do you collect the data? How do you define the data? The frameworks for then analyzing the data, modeling the data, what kinds of insights, and then also kind of like beyond insights, also, I wouldn't say automation at that point, but, actions can you get out of the data? So it's really like extracting the most value you can get, most impact you can get.
Yeah, and again, because you have this background, it's such it'll give you an advantage, right? It'll give you a sort of a deep understanding and insights, and bring metrics to this work. You were at GITEX in Dubai. Were you speaking there, or were you attending, or what?
Yeah, I was on a panel. There was a track on there was a focus on Africa and Africa innovations and startups. So I was on a panel about kind of the experience of African startups, their startups in Africa.
I see. Do you know Steve Nuri at all, by any chance? No. I mean, he's got this huge community in the data science. I think it's like in the millions or something.
Oh, okay. I must look that up. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, he was a GITEX, and he was the moderator of a session with the president of ACM, Giannis Ioannidis. So, and but they were talking about AI and things like that. But he's a big data guy. I mean, a data person. I just shouldn't call him a guy, but he's a big data person. And rounding up people who are interested in AI for social impact, or data for social impact, things like that. But when I was talking to him, I think he said his community is 10 million or something like that. It's pretty big.
Wow, that is big. Okay, I must connect with him.
Yeah, you need to talk to him, because there's definitely sort of a confluence, and he figured out how to be an influencer. He started with no community. Like I think on LinkedIn, he's headed towards 2 million followers. I could be out of date now. And in LinkedIn, it's hard to get 2 million followers, right? So yeah, and he figured out how to do it. And yeah, I mean, and okay. So that's really interesting. So how did you get involved with Zindi? And what is Zindi? Or did I pronounce it right?
Yeah, that's correct, Zindi. So we are a startup. We have built now the largest platform for data scientists, AI, and machine learning developers, with a focus on Africa. In the beginning, it was only Africa. We've been around for 6 years, and we created Zindi. I mean, and really, it came out of a lot of the work that or the thinking that I was doing in the different projects I was working on, connecting data to the problems that most need them on the ground, and and also how do we leverage and how do we mobilize like these kinds of technologies and AI, but to real local problems. And then beyond that, so I had moved to South Africa about over 8 years ago. I moved to South Africa to run a program that was to advance the use of data science for financial inclusion, and also to build a data platform, a financial inclusion data platform, a global one. But it was based out of, it was run by an organization out of South Africa. And so when I came to South Africa, I also met Echo Duker and Megan Yates, who are my co-founders of Zindi, and they were running a data science consulting company. And we connected over this idea that, this understanding that there are so many talented young people on the continent, so many people who, even have degrees in computer science or in mathematics, but they don't always have access to this career space. And then on the other hand, Megan and Echo, they were working with banks, with telcos, with retailers in Africa that are saying, oh, I need to hire this, McKinsey or this consultant from Europe or from the US to help me. And it's like, okay, There's, there are people in your own backyard, who are prepared and ready to help you. So we wanted to create a platform where we could give space to the young people on the continent, to build their skills, to raise their own profiles as professionals, and to connect with opportunities. And then for companies to be able to access this incredible talent pool. So now we sit at 70,000 users. And like I said, in the beginning, we started with a focus on Pan-Africa. Today, we have people from 52 of the 54 African countries. But beyond that, we've also organically grown out of Africa as well. And I like to think of ourselves as really an emerging market, a developing market platform, because we have, significant communities in South Asia, like India is actually our second largest country. We have people in the Middle East, in Latin America, in Eastern Europe. And so it's become, I like to think of ourselves as kind of like a professional network of data scientists and AI professionals. And for companies that we work with, it's this incredible opportunity to tap into a community and a talent pool that you otherwise would never really know even existed, much less be able to hire, right?
But it's not a nonprofit, right? It's a B Corp, or
we're a venture-backed startup. We're a startup company.
Right. Are you in the Microsoft for Startups program at all, or any of those startup ecosystems?
Yeah, we were. I mean, I think we have, because it's been, we've been around for 6 years. Like in the early days, we were with Microsoft, AWS, NVIDIA, and now they're our clients. So,
yeah. So, I mean, you're a startup and you're venture back, which means you got institutional investors in there, right? Like VCs who invested in you. I mean, like Microsoft has a Microsoft for Startups Pegasus program, which is their unicorn builder. But I think you have to have over 1 million ARR to be qualified. But it's like you got to be in their program, you got to be using their services, and then you get certain amount of traction, and then you can sort of poke at them to get invited into the Pegasus program. And then once you're in the Pegasus program, you get a lot of support, a lot more support.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I should definitely look into it. I mean, Microsoft has been kind of our oldest friends. I mean, I'm really impressed with the work that they do in Africa, actually. Like they're very active, like deeply understand the market. And from the very beginning of Zindi, we've been working with them. So interested for sure.
Yeah. But you're part of Google, or, Google's a client, and I get others, right? So, but I mean, are you profitable, or are you still in that journey yet?
We're profitable. But I'd say not to the point where, we're able to meet all our ambitions with our, with our own capital. So we'll probably be looking at fundraising next year.
Right. So that's really, really interesting. So you're the co-founder and CEO, right? Out of Zindi. So that's an interesting sort of ecosystem you built, and you're like a matching service, right? Companies or communities who need AI data science support, and you have these practitioners, and
so we connect them in two main ways. Like the first is through the challenges that we run. And that's actually kind of the most exciting part of our platform is we have these challenges. Every month we're launching 2 to 3 new challenges. We've run over 300 of them in the history of Zindi, and they are specifically data science, machine learning, and AI challenges. So we work with companies, we work with startups, we work with governments, we work with NGOs as well. So for example, we have a challenge up right now that is looking at images of crops in Ghana, so tomato, maize, peppers, And in these images, there's certain types of diseases that are specific, to the ecosystem there. And, so training models on identifying the disease in the image. But we've done others like, geospatial challenges. We worked with the government of Togo to, we overlaid census data plus geospatial plus satellite to kind of create a heat map of the potential demand for fiber or for internet connectivity in the country. So for Togo and the ministry, that was important in order to help inform their rollout of infrastructure. But beyond that, so there's the challenges where the companies, or in this case, the Ministry of Togo, like owns the IP from the solutions that come from the challenges. So that's one way that they're connecting with this community. But then the second way is that now the ministry is interviewing the top 20 from the leaderboard, and they're going to hire between 10 and 20 people into the ministry to work with them. So then that's the second way, is that then the hiring, actually being able to hire the top data scientists.
So when you run a challenge, then how do you finance that, or people just donate the time?
So the financing, and that's our main business model, is the companies or the organizations that host the challenge pay for the platform. So there's, so it includes the use of the platform, the reach to our community, because every challenge will get, 500 to up to like 2,000 people working on the problem. And then, we kind of handle it's not just a self-serve thing. Like we also give them, a dedicated data scientist who will help prep the data, review all the winning code that comes in. So that's how we fund it. So they would have to pay for the use of the platform, as well as there's a bounty or a prize that goes to the top 3 winners.
So that's an interesting model. And it provides an impact, and it's sustainable. So usually when there's an NGO, they're very grant-based, and it's a continuing cycle of trying to get money, whereas you're self-sustaining. I mean, I guess the ideal kind of company to have, whether it's like an NGO, nonprofit or not, is something that's self-sustaining. So you're self-sustaining, and that's what you want, right? And yet you're having an impact. You're doing work that's good.
Yeah, exactly, Stephen. I mean, I think, having come from the nonprofit background, like I can appreciate really deeply, like where we are now. And I also know that like we've had so much impact for, the little capital that we have raised to date. We raised a seed round. I guess it's been almost 3 years ago now that we raised our seed round. But it doesn't stop here, right? It's not just about being profitable and, or self-sustaining, but actually, like, I do want Zindi to be the gateway, be the platform for this community, for a community of people who've been traditionally excluded from the AI, the global AI world. So I can see, we're having conversations, but the lessons learned that we've gotten from Africa and kind of the opportunities, the challenges, you can draw parallels, and there's similarities like in other emerging markets, and I spent a lot of time in Latin America. Like I'm super excited. We ran 2 challenges for the government of Mexico recently. One was to use satellite data to identify vegetation types. It was like 150 different types of vegetation. And it was a classification challenge of, what vegetation is on the ground. And they did another one. It was to identify human settlement. So, just in a lot, and this is a parallel, like in South Africa, this is also a thing where you have informal settlements, and it is changing literally, like, not only 10 years apart, you're taking census data like every 10 years, but actually it's changing literally like every month, maybe even every week, like the boundaries of settlements. And so, so Mexico also wanted to run a challenge where you identify human settlements in the country with satellite imagery. So anyway, like I'm very excited. I think there's opportunities like in these other regions as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did an introduction to Chaco. And of course, he has the Hire Me platform. He definitely has a lot of capability, operates his own labs, he's got like 300 PhDs working for. Hopefully that conversation will progress because I can see, I mean, you would definitely win, but I could see some benefit to his sort of impact vision that he has.
Mm.
Have you worked with the World Food Program and Bernard Kowalcz by any chance?
No, we haven't.
So they're a UN agency, so they won't fund you, but maybe you can work on some joint venture where you get a government entity or something, or the Gates Foundation or something funding both of you, because you have this repository of all these data scientists, right? So
Yeah.
between the two of you, you can then maybe launch a challenge or something. Mind you, I mean, they get a lot of direct funding, right? Because it's food and things related to food like healthcare, climate, logistics, ag tech. And Bernard runs their innovation accelerator. So they've had up to this point, I think 295 million in grant funding for the startups and innovation they do. And they've impacted 61 million lives so far, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
I would recommend, I mean, I'm sure if you had a conversation with them, and his name is Bernard Kowalcz, and he's the head of the Innovation Accelerator for the World Food Program. And the World Food Program is like, I think it's one of or the largest UN agency, right? So they have
Yeah.
22,000 staff. They have the largest logistics program in the world, like 100 aircraft, 25 ships, 6 or 7 thousand vehicles, things like that. So, and
Yeah.
their innovation accelerator does everything that you're talking about: classification of crops,
Yeah.
soil. I mean, Bumitra has the ability to kind of analyze soil and their satellite data, and it helps with regenerative ag tech, and there's carbon credit, sort of carbon sort of implementation in there as well. And two of their
Yeah.
yeah, and two of their portfolio companies last year, the ones that we're working with, got the Earthshot Prize, which is like the top world's top prize. It's £1 million each, right? So
Yeah, I will definitely try to connect with him. I think, yeah, the World Food Program, okay, I know them, but yeah, we haven't had any conversations. And a lot of the Zindi competitions that we've run have had an angle of food security, agriculture. I mean, like you
right.
said, there's just so many applications and yeah. So I would be really interested.
Yeah, probably then Steve Nuri is one to kind of ping and see if we can do a connection with him. The other one, as I mentioned, would be put on a co-watch. There's a Future Tales lab, or there's some labs that work out of Southeast Asia, part of the DTGO group. I think it's worth uh, reaching out to them to see if you can do something. I'm just thinking of that. If you know any YPOers, I would say what you do would touch some of the things the YPO people like to do. So
Mm.
So
Yeah.
the only reason I could talk about it because I've interviewed people within that community, and they have this thing called the YPO Impact Networks Council, and that whole Impact Networks Council is focused on impact, and because they're YPOers, they're very kind of entrepreneurial or business oriented, which would fit with what you're doing. And underneath that Impact Networks Council, again, I can talk about because I've written articles and interviewed the principals in this thing, but they have something focused on people, so that could be healthcare, immigration, whatever. They have something to do with planet. Under planet, it could be oceans, ecological systems. Again, some of the things that you're involved with. So I would say ag tech would fit into there. They have sustainable business, and then they have peace. So those would be on 4 networks under the Impact Networks Council. And because you have a community, that community I think would be valuable. Did you connect with the IEEE entrepreneurship program when you were there?
We've done some work with IEEE, especially, in Africa and North Africa. IEEE is quite strong. So we've done some competitions or hackathons in partnership, but
I would
I
say
can look them up.
IEEE entrepreneurship. So that's a specific program within IEEE. ACM is also starting an entrepreneurship, or they're looking at circling up more or adding, doing more in the IEEE or in the ACM entrepreneurship area. But the IEEE one has been out longer. So it's the only reason I can talk about it because I'm actually keynoting the one in Singapore coming up.
Oh, okay, right. You're heading to Singapore right after this,
Yeah.
right?
And then they were at GITEX. They had a partnership with GITEX where they had an entire entire program at the North Star.
Yes.
And then they had the main stage for an entire day on the last day at GITEX.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So because I'm plugged into that one as well. And then GITEX has asked me if I can help them on future conferences. So I'll definitely keep you in mind to recommend you directly.
Even, yeah.
So try poking around. And then if you have problems, let me know. Because I know all of these people, so I could just join you. But
I appreciate it. Yeah.
So that's interesting. I can see the value, and it definitely impact, but it's sustainable, right? Which is great, and it's growing. So, how about you? What are some of your plans outside of Zindi?
Oh, that is such a hard question to answer. It's I never aspired or thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I never aspired to be a founder or be in this startup world. I mean, it's strange. Like I grew up in essentially Silicon Valley, so I've been around it, I've seen it, but it was never a thing for me. And yeah, so it's been ironic to kind of trip right into this. And to be honest, like it's been incredibly rewarding. But it has been all consuming. It's been over 6 years and it has been my life. This is blood, sweat, and tears.
Okay, so because there's people in my audience who are in research, let's say, or they're engineers like yourself, or have a computing science, background, but they're entrepreneurial, and then they go, "Oh, I got to do a startup." So give them some advice. Well, what are the attributes that give me 5, if you can, 5 attributes that make for a startup?
I think, well, and it's funny because people gave me, or I've heard this, and then now it feels very real. So like one that you hear a lot is that you find something that you really believe in, because that's the only way you're going to get through the hard times. And that'll give you the most chance of success. If you really believe in the idea and the concept that you're building. I think also secondly is that you need to develop very thick skin. Like you will hear 100 no's for every one yes, and that's fine. And that's totally fine. And it works. And then I think, it's surrounding yourself with the right people, with the right team, and people who complement you, and also people that, share your values and share your vision. Yeah. So I think those 3 things, have been, I guess, standard pieces of advice in the startup world. But like after having lived it, as you take each step, like those advices take on a whole new meaning, because it feels very personal, as you go along in the journey. So,
sometimes when I do, I mean, I get a lot of questions from youth, right? People who are either Gen Z, Gen Y, not so much Gen Y now, because Gen Y are getting older, but Gen Z, which is like 1997, post 1997 or 1990, and then Alpha generation, you get a little bit of that. I think those are ones born from 2012. And the reason is because I do these youth events, right? In fact, I got this one coming up in Prague. It's called Futureport Youth, and they got me in an ice stadium. And that's where I'm doing my keynote. I'm doing the opening keynote, and it's being live streamed globally, right? So,
Oh, wow.
but often there's this feeling amongst younger people that, you know, work-life balance, got to be a 30-hour week, and weekends are definitely off. And now let's be frank. Is that the reality of a startup? A 30-hour week?
Um, so it's been interesting, like also because we started the company in South Africa, in Cape Town, where I was. I would say like Cape Townians are known for their work-life balance. And so like I think, you know, my team they're all very hardworking, super dedicated. Um, but I would say because we had a Cape Town like kind of origin story in some ways, like we adopted some pretty good work-life balance standards like from the beginning. And me coming from the US, like I felt a bit uncomfortable with it, to be honest, like in the beginning. But like actually, like I think it's been the reason why we have a lot of the people who are on the team, and we still have a small team of, you know, 10 people, but a lot of the people have been with us for literally 4, even 5 years, which is unheard of, like for a startup. But we have incredible people on the team. I mean, they are the engine, you know, that is, and they, you know, and I think that part of it is that like I have tried to like respect people's, boundaries are kind of like that work-life balance. And so we did, you know, things like, you know, people do have to work on weekends occasionally, but it is not the standard. I try not to send out messages like, you know, late at night. So I think it for the sustainability, it has been a good thing.
Yeah, I guess I'm more old school in that all of my experiences of startup founders who are successful, they work really hard.
Yeah.
And the mission is something comes up, it has to get done. An
Yeah.
emergency comes up, it just has to get fixed.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, we still abide by that 100%.
Yeah,
But I think the thing
yeah,
is really prioritizing, right? I mean,
right.
it's like when there's an emergency, all hands on deck. We ran the AI hackathon for the government of Singapore
Oh, we did.
last year. Yeah. And so the time difference meant that literally like we had a tag team of people on 24 hours a day, basically.
Okay.
It's like, okay, you have the midnight to 3 a.m. shift, you have the 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift, like, 100%. Like, and also you had said founders, like, I think the thing is that, my co-founder and I, we work. We work extremely hard, but we are protective of our team, and I think our team appreciates that we, and then it's the prioritization. I think focus is the thing that I've learned also.
But I'll bet you as co-founder and CEO, you're working 100-hour weeks a lot, or 80-hour weeks, or 60-hour weeks. Right?
That's what I was saying. The
You may
blood,
be
sweat, and
protected by
tears
your
are
team, but
real.
it's you. Ultimately, the buck stops with you, right?
Yes.
You're working incredible hours. Am I right?
Yes. 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 It's
Somebody
been
else.
blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, or this kind of Angela Duckworth of success, right? I mean, you got to be you have the perseverance and resilience and hard work and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
startup can be very chaotic,
Yes. A
and
hundred
that's kind of
percent.
like that's the norm. You got to get used
Yeah.
to it, right?
It is. It is. But I think, what keeps me going, obviously, is the impact that we're having, and this ambition to to change the world, and starting from Africa. And I love that also we can have a story. I do see that we will have a story of like Africa changing the world, that we have roots in Africa, but actually this will be a platform that that changes the way all people are represented in AI.
I guess the other thing is, and we can't get it. I mean, it's not. It's when you do these public interviews, you can't solicit capital. It's not allowed, right? So, but we can talk about the journey of getting institutional capital, and that's tough, right? The questions that it's very metrics driven, you know. Or I'm giving you my view. My view is an idea doesn't get funded. You got to have more than an idea, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what are the challenges in getting institutional capital?
I think for first time so there's two different realities: first time founders and post first time founders. I guess those realities are very different, and I think for first time founders, it's exactly what you said. It's like an idea doesn't get funded. So what gets funded? An individual. And if you don't have a track record as a founder, or you don't, and even more than a track record, if you don't have those relationships, it's incredibly difficult. So I think all the pre-series A, like the early stage investing, like that space is very challenging. It's very challenging for people who have a different identity from the standard or kind of the typical founder identity, if I could say it in a nice way. But I would include women there. I'd also especially include, say, like for African founders, it's very hard. It's super hard. Like that pre-series A space is chaotic. That's chaotic. Like, trying to find institutional investment. It's very challenging. I think sometimes you can get lucky and find if you and it's like I said, you'll hear 100 no's. If you can find that one yes, like great, like that's par for the course. So if you can find someone or an investor that is aligned, that shares your vision, that's excited about your vision, like that's great. But then also, like, VCs can be extremely demanding. So then once you kind of cross the line and you have the metrics to really create a compelling story, which I think Zindi is basically getting there. Like our user numbers are on the rise. We have, we've increased our monthly active users by, I think, like 60-70% in the last couple of months. Like we've really been pushing on monthly active users as a KPI. And so like we're getting to a good place. And I think that we'll see. I mean, we'll look at fundraising, and I think, the reality changes quite drastically, like once your metrics can really speak for themselves. So but the last couple of years have been really hard. I mean, as I think you and a lot of your listeners would realize, like the last couple of years have been hard.
Yeah, the valuations have gone down, and it's definitely harder for startups to get funding right now. The capital is definitely looking for solid metrics, like what's your annual recurring revenue or monthly recurring revenue? Are you seeing? So it's really going to the fundamentals, and not so much the blue sky. I would say blue sky still it works in the generative AI new model space. Where you get really big valuations happening with famous founders and things like that. But that's unusual. So I'm going to go to our last question. We're down to our last few minutes here. So what recommendations or questions do you want to leave the audience?
Well, I guess, I guess recommendations, for me, I mean, I guess what we've been talking about is like, for me, what's important is that, AI will change the world. AI will be driving, AI is going to be playing in everyone's backyard.
Right.
As I said, with data science, and it will be changing the way we think, the way we behave, the decisions that are made. And so the most important thing we can do is make sure that everyone is represented in the way that the AI is behaving and the decisions that are made around, before AI starts to make decisions for us, there are many decisions that have to be made first, right, by a human, in the way that, what data you're using to train the models, how are the models being built, how are they being applied, in what context, how. So I just want to make sure that, that we're all keeping an eye on to make sure that everyone's represented at those tables where those decisions are being made. And that's how we'll make sure that AI has the most positive impact possible.
Right, and that's why you're trying to address the underserved communities globally, right? And that's your, even though you're now in 190 countries plus, you're really trying to serve. You're making sure that the underserved communities are also represented at the table, right? So
yes, 100%, exactly.
Celina, maybe I'll ask another. How did we get introduced? I can't recall.
Paul introduced us. And then I think Paul might have met you at the AI for Good Summit, the ITU, because Zindi is actually we are the platform for the ITU AI for Good Summit for their AI for Good hackathons every year.
Oh,
so they run the challenges on Zindi.
You don't have that in your profile.
I should add it.
Yeah, I mean, AI for Good is it's the world's biggest sustainability AI solutions, effort in the world today. It's like the audience is over 3 billion. I mean, the sector in general talks about AI for Good, right? And all these corporates use it, and research groups, and
So we've run 15 challenges on Zindi for AI for Good, for the AI for Good Summit every year. Yeah,
that's validation. I'm shocked. That should
sorry.
You have.
I should have led with that.
You have to resubmit your profile, right?
Okay. Yeah.
That's validation, right?
100%. Yes.
Because I was there at the beginning, and I raised capital for them, and brought in the initial speakers and things like that. So, but it's a very prestigious program now, so I know them. So, it's like having the gold standard anoint you, and they're using you, right? So, and they're picky now, and they're very picky, right? So, I mean, in a good way. In other words, if they use you, they really trust you, and they think you're great, things like that.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. I mean, Zindi we've had the opportunity to really build up the trust in the market. And I think they recognize that, that we have access to this very diverse global community.
The WhatsApp where I tagged you with a leader or some leaders, and you're describing who you are, especially if the leader comes from the nonprofit space, you have to put in the ITU in there. Otherwise, they'll ignore you.
Okay.
And you're the hackathon platform for. but the AI for Good crosses across commercial and non-commercial and government and at UN. I mean, it sits across every sector, right? So. So you definitely need to make sure you mention that with Chacos and all the other introductions I've done so far. Make sure you mention it. I because I didn't see it in your profile. Anyways, I hope I didn't come across as lecturer. I'm just trying to give you advice.
Yeah, I appreciate it, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you for this amazing work. So. You get over 70,000 data and AI practitioners across 52 African countries of 190 countries worldwide. You serve clients like Google, Microsoft, ABSA, Ernst & Young, and the ITU, who created this thing called AI for Good, which is the biggest AI sustainability program in the world. that will help you work with the World Food Program.
Okay.
And they have one of the largest funds in acceleration, and they run boot camps and things like that all the time. And they definitely attract people who want to fund those things. So why not do joint ventures with them, right? So,
Yeah.
and if you have problems getting to Bernhard, let me know, and I'll do a WhatsApp and just join you or something like that, right? Or actually anybody can
Okay.
mention today. But
No,
you
that
try
sounds
first,
great.
and if you don't get any
Okay.
traction, then I'll come in.
Stephen, thank you. I appreciate it. I
Okay.
appreciate the
Oh, I
support.
love your
Yeah.
background too. Applied mathematics, science, Peace Corps, international affairs masters, but with this math modeling, economic modeling embedded in it. And it's such a perfect fit for AI and data science, what you do. And you have a impact soul, so that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for this. I appreciate
You'll be an
it.
advocate now because I'm on the road all the time.
I love it.
Okay, we'll see you.
Okay. Well, cool. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Stephen. Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.